Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisholm, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. Well, hello, everybody. John Chisholm here for the Song Revolution podcast. We've got a great show for you today that is going to be everything you ever wanted to know about copyrights, but we're afraid to ask. Have you ever wondered how to protect the copyright of your songs? I mean, where do you begin to understand what it means to actually publish songs and how to work with music companies or even to be your own publisher? What should you expect if you assign publishing to a music company? And is it enough anymore to mail your songs to yourself to protect your copyright, if it ever was indeed? Well, today I'm sitting here with the lovely and talented Susan Fontaine Godwin, the owner, founder, chief vision officer for Christian Copyright Solutions, a company established to provide licensing solutions for the Christian community, including all of you songwriters, artists, and any churches who happen to be listening today. So if you're currently writing and releasing your songs on YouTube, SoundCloud, or any social media, this episode is going to help you learn how to protect your songs and even your sound recording copyrights. Susan, good to have you on the program today.
Hi, John. Great to be here.
Yeah, you and I go way, way back.
Oh, yes. Maybe back further than we'd like to go.
No. It's so good to have you here in the Nashville Christian Songwriters studios. So elaborate here. And hey, we get the job done, right?
That's exactly right.
So you and I go back all the way to 1992 when I came into Integrity Music as director of song development and copyright. Well, that kind of happened a little bit later.
Yes.
I was director of song development first. And then they decided I was so good that they just put me over copyright, and which was really you. You were already doing all that, and I just pretended I knew what I was doing. But tell us a little bit about your background and where you've come from, even pre-Integrity, and when you were there, and just catch us up on who you are and where you come from. How'd you get to be the copyright queen?
Oh gosh, that's quite a story and a bit of a journey. But I came to Mobile, Alabama, from Southern California in 1984. My background was actually in journalism and print production. And I came to work for Integrity Music in Mobile, Alabama. Before it was the music, it was actually Integrity Communications in 1984, with a lot of print publications, newsletters and magazines, and a teaching tape of the month. But within a year, all of that changed, and Hosanna Music was birthed right around 1985. And Mike Coleman, the president of the company, asked me to start up this area of the company called music administration and copyrights. And I said, well, I don't know anything about it. And he said, well, I think, I've prayed about it and I think you can do it. So I kind of dove in and learned everything I could about copyrights and publishing and music administration. And that was the beginning of a whole new career for me, which is now, gosh, what does that add up to? A lot of years, 32 years that I've been involved in music publishing, administration, media, and
amazing.
All kinds of things, yes.
Wow. So you came to Integrity from the Northwest, and right?
Southern California, actually.
Oh,
at the
Southern
time.
Cal.
Yes, yeah.
Aren't you originally from the Northwest, though?
I have a lot of family in the Northwest, but I actually came from Western New York to Virginia to California, and then I've been in Alabama now 33 years.
And you hardly sound Southern
I have resisted along the way.
I have resisted. Oh, that's great. So in the early days, Integrity then wasn't oriented toward the music, but you were there when it suddenly took off.
Yes, we actually did a direct mail survey of our 100,000 magazine audience, and to find out what topics they wanted. And what happened is the survey showed that they wanted worship music, but not teaching on worship music, but the actual worship music. And that's where it started.
And that was in 80...
Well, that would have been around 85.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought it was much earlier than that for some reason. When was that? The first Tom Brooks Grace World Outreach, St. Louis?
It would have been in 85.
85.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I arrived in October of 84, and then in 85, we did a survey, and I actually was kind of put the direct mail piece together.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow, right at the very beginning.
Yes, and it was overwhelmingly reflected that people wanted worship music. And so that's where it began. And we started out looking for existing recordings, worship recordings, that had a very live, fresh sound and new, anointed worship songs. And we found two. And so suddenly we were in the, we had to create and record our own worship projects every other month. And so Hosanna 3 was our first that we recorded ourselves.
So Tom Brooks, Grace World Outreach, I think, was that the first or second one?
That was the first one.
What, do you remember what the second one was?
John Sellers was the second one.
John Sellers. And where was he back in the day?
I think he was in Texas, as I recall.
Wow.
I've forgotten the name of the church, to be honest. But yeah, it was his project.
Amazing.
Yes.
And then you created the third one, and Tom Brooks, was he on for
He was
producer
the
by then?
producer.
Okay.
He was the producer, and he went on to, after, I think, Hosanna 3, he must have done 30 recordings like every other month.
At least.
Yeah,
at
he
least.
was the only producer.
My 1994 recording called Firm Foundation was the first one that I think someone besides Tom.
That sounds right.
And it was Don Harris, who is an amazing bass player and kind of broke the mold. I mean, I'm always going to buck the system a little bit. But, Tom, amazing guy. I mean, Grammy Award guy, crazy, was just helped with the inauguration this year.
I didn't realize that.
I think so. Crazy stuff.
I saw him on a program, but I thought it was the Grammys.
Maybe it was the Grammys.
Yeah, I know. He was conducting the orchestra.
That's
big
what it was.
number in the
okay,
Grammys.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
We'll have to edit this out.
Well, maybe next year he's going to do the.
Maybe it's
Maybe the next inauguration. No political comments.
Go there,
but maybe the next inauguration. Maybe that's prophetic. I don't know.
I don't know. I knew it was something big. I was the inauguration Grammys.
Yeah,
Grammys
those are both really big.
Yeah, right.
So
okay, it was the Grammys.
Yeah, but he is amazing. Just an incredibly talented musician. And when you look back, it's pretty phenomenal that he did that many projects in that amount of time.
Unparalleled.
Right.
And just to go from zero to shipping over 200,000 units every other month.
Right.
Integrity blew the entire Nashville recording industry away. Just crazy what happened back in the day. And then you were right there in the middle of trying to manage that.
Yes. And when I started, we had I think 70 songs in our catalog. And
you're kidding.
No. Gary Gustafson sort of handed the baton off to me and in that area. And I think we had 70 songs. When I left, I think we had about 4,500.
Yeah.
And we had we as a publisher did not sign songs unless we were planning on recording it within the next 5 to 6 months. So we weren't just loading up the catalog. These were songs that were published.
Right.
Pretty much.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I came in right after Marty Nystrom.
Yes.
Who wrote As the Deer.
Right.
One of the biggest worship songs ever, really.
Yes.
And I walked in and there were... just a handful of writers. Linda Shazo, More Precious Than Silver. Of course, Don Moen, famous for Give Thanks. He didn't write it. Henry Smith wrote that. God bless Henry Smith. And lots of writers around the world, but just a few that were there on staff. And in my first 18 months at Integrity, from 92 until early 94, we did 26 scripture memory albums.
Oh, I remember that. My gosh, that was amazing.
Crazy. And so I grew the roster from about 9 writers to 18 full-time songwriters. And I just had to keep up with the demand of what was happening. And you were over there ginning in the copyright area and adding employees. And
yeah, we were growing. Really, it was an exciting time. It was fun to keep up with it. And it was fun to work with songwriters. And, I felt very much a calling at that time to represent the rights of songwriters and to explain to them, you know, what was going on, how things worked, and to make sure they got those royalty checks every quarter.
Yeah.
Which ended up being a huge endeavor, you know, because we began, I mean, the royalty statements, I remember by the time I left, I had 2 stacks of them that were literally, each of them a foot tall on my desk that I had to review.
Oh, my. Yeah,
You know?
it was crazy. And I eventually was promoted to be over the copyright area, an area that I still to this day know very little about. And I'm kidding. I probably know a lot more than I think I know about it. But
I'm sure.
You know, it seems to be such a mysterious area for people. And I think in a few moments we need to get into some of the exciting, powerful stuff, you know, that's around copyright. I know that people who are administrators get short shrift when it comes to, you know, all the fun, hype, sexy stuff, you know, around the songwriting and music biz, but it's a very important area. So you cut your teeth, obviously, there in the integrity days, and it mushrooming up from 70 songs to 4,500.
Right.
And it grew incredibly after that as well. We both cycled out for different reasons, and here we are now these 20-something years later, and you've had, you started off with Righteous Oaks Music, ROM administration.
Exactly, in 1996.
Right.
Graduated from the class of 1996 at Integrity.
Yeah, right.
And started out with administering a few catalogs, including yours,
right,
as well as working on some special projects like the Worship Leader Song Discovery. Helped them get that started and worked on that for 4 years, and then went on to do some international sub-publishing and had the chance to travel all over the world and set up various copyright offices overseas, and got to do a lot of fun things.
Yeah, you teach as well. You teach on copyright.
I do. I love that. I've kind of got a teacher DNA in me, I guess. I have a lot of family teachers in our family, and I love to teach and teach at the University of Mobile and their worship arts program, and teach on intellectual property once a year, and just finished up our class, so I enjoy that.
Well, you did a workshop years ago at a coffee shop in Mobile where I attended called Creative Riverbanks.
Yes.
And I've never forgotten that.
Wow.
And I've actually referred to that on many occasions.
Really?
Absolutely. When I'm working when I'm teaching or working with clients, and I talk about the structures that come into the business side of what we do as songwriters and creatives and artists. And you're teaching on just that the river banks are what help the water flow in the right direction. You know, it's just so cool, and I've never forgotten that.
That's great.
Yeah, the other thing about you and your teaching and just your whole philosophy and perspective of copyrights that I've never forgotten, and we can talk more about this in depth in a little while when we get into some of the things around this, but the whole concept of copyright and your work existing to promote, protect, and collect. You know, that's really, really important when it comes to being a songwriter at any level. So you started in 1996 with ROM and the catalogs, everything you just said, but now you have Christian Copyright Solutions, and I love your title as founder and chief vision officer. Tell us a little bit about that and what CCS is all about.
Well, the title, I realize, just trying to understand my giftings and talents and other people's giftings and talents and how important that is, and getting the chance to have a company and build a team. I just love that aspect of having my own company. And I've learned a lot when I was in Integrity and had a team. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned from those mistakes. And so one of the things I realize is that my strength is not necessarily in the daily operations and details, but in vision. What is the vision? Where are we going as a company? Where are we going as individuals? I think that's part of the Riverbanks. When I put together that teaching material, is where are we going and what's our vision? And so that's my role. That's an important role that I play at the company. But Christian Copyright Solutions exists to help you do music right. And that is specifically, we create licensing solutions for artists and songwriters and ministries and churches. And so we've had the opportunity to partner with the performance rights organizations, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the details of what songwriters need to do to be affiliated with the PRO, which stands for Performance Rights Organization. And we've had the chance to partner with them and create some very simplified one-stop licensing for performance rights for ministries and churches. And we also have a service called Indie Admin, which provides administration and management for independent songwriters and publishers.
Wow. Well, it sounds complex to those of us who are just lowly songwriters or artists. So I have a lot of people ask me through our client work, okay, what is a copyright? And the very basics, right? And so I try to cover, what kind of licenses there are out there. And so do you have a 3-minute elevator speech that you give on that?
Well, I don't know if it's an elevator speech, but it's a little, Basic 101's copyright. I have a video, actually. You can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, you have lots of great stuff at your website, ChristianCopyrightSolutions.com.
Yes, and we have a learning center there. We've got a lot of free downloadable fact sheets and blog articles and ebooks. We have an ebook called Solving the Puzzle of Copyrights. And we have a new toolkit, church copyright toolkit, that you can download as well. But we do have a lot of videos on YouTube that you can find. But as far as Copyrights 101, and I think that copyrights do seem very complex and kind of confusing and overwhelming. So I've spent most of my career trying to find a way to break it down into bite-sized, digestible pieces for people because I realize it's overwhelming and confusing. So copyrights, the U.S. Constitution protects intellectual property. And one of those, there's 3 types of intellectual property. One of those is copyrighted works. The other is trademark and the other is patents. And I don't deal with those 2, but copyrights, 8 different works of authorship can be copyrighted. And a lot of people don't realize how much of the creative works can be copyrighted. Songs, of course, which are classified as music with any accompanying lyrics. Sound recordings, which is a separate copyright from the song. And literary works, visual images, audio-video works, choreography can be right. A lot of people don't realize that.
My liturgical dance can be copyrighted.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If it's substantive originality. Yeah, it requires.
Believe me, my dance is very original.
I think we should look at that. We ought to look into copyright, and we have to send a video. You have to send evidence into the Copyright Office. And dramatic works, as well as architecture. So those are the 8 works of authorship that can be copyrighted. And, within literary works, there's a lot of specific things like sermons can be copyrighted, speeches, novels, essay, blog articles are considered literary works.
Really?
Yes.
That is very important.
Yeah. Yeah, probably a lot of our audience maybe has a blog and you write articles, or you find a great article you're interested in, and I don't recommend you cut and paste and put the whole thing on your blog. So and you need to cite it, of course, wherever you found it. But blog articles can be copyrighted. Things like our fact sheets can be copyrighted. The ebook, of course, that we created is copyrightable. All of those things come under literary works. Visual images, which a lot of people with their websites now are using a lot of visual images.
Right.
Of course, that includes photographs, paintings, illustrations, all types of visual works as well. So those are the 8 works. And then the other aspect of Copyrights 101 is that copyright owners have the exclusive rights, and there's a bundle of exclusive rights that they have. The first is reproduction, the right to copy or reproduce, the right to make a derivative or an adaptation of the original work.
The right to remain silent, because whatever you say
can be used to incriminate you. That's right. We better do that.
I interrupted you. Sorry, but I couldn't help it.
We have to break up copyrights with humor because we know it's a rather,
it was too
dry
perfect.
Subject,
it was too perfect. Okay, I'm sorry. That was terrible of me.
I was going through my whole litany.
You were.
You broke the flow.
Start over.
No.
Now that we got the laugh out of it.
Yeah, that's right. Reproduce. So you can laugh about that, right? Derivative, which is adapting. So maybe you've got a movie Well, let's say, you've got a movie that you want to create a song, I want to adapt it and create a song. Or more commonly, there's a book and you want to adapt that into a play or a film. Translations are considered derivative works. Arrangements, custom arrangements. So there's the derivative right. There's the right to display the work and the right to distribute the work and the right to perform publicly the work, which is what we deal with, performance rights licenses. And then there's a relatively new right that has to do with digital recordings and the transmission of those, which primarily affects streaming music as well as satellite radio. So there you go. That's kind of the rundown on the Basics 101.
Wow. And that sounds even more complicated than it did in the beginning. When it's like, okay, so I've written a song, and so I think I'm going to put it on a CD and mail it to myself so that, there's a stamp on it from the U.S. Post Office, and that covers me legally should somebody steal my song. So... does that work anymore?
Doesn't hold much water.
No?
No. I mean, here's the thing. And this, the copyrights has changed over the years, but in the last 25, 30 years, as soon as you affix a copyright to a tangible medium of expression, and that can be recording it, audio recording, audio visual recording. It could be printing it out on a song sheet. It could be, publishing it on your website or your blog. Tangible medium of expression. It is copyrighted. It's your copyright. Okay. So it's not required to register it with the Copyright Office. However, and of course, I would recommend anything in a tangible medium of expression that you put your name and the copyright symbol and the year that you published it or created it. However, if you end up having to go to court over a dispute of some kind, somebody has lifted part of your song and put it in their song, or they've just claimed the song as theirs, then you're going to need evidence of it being registered with the Copyright Office. And certainly, mailing a recording to yourself and leaving it sealed and all, that's not going to hold up in court.
Right. It's an old wives' tale kind of a thing.
Yes.
The old days.
It might work if somebody did something and said, well, no, look, I did this back in 86, and I haven't opened this yet and everything, but not in a court of law.
Right. Well, in all my years, I'm sure there are many more infringement suits than I have ever heard about. But in my personal experience, there have only been two. One that happened at Starsong Media with an artist at Starsong wanted to rewrite Give Thanks.
I was just listening to it on my drive up to Nashville.
You were?
Yes. I was just listening to that song.
To that song?
Yes.
Oh, I thought
and it just kind of refreshed the whole memory of that.
I thought that it got stopped. I don't remember.
Oh, no, I had it on my, it's on a streaming service right now.
Oh, my goodness.
We'll have to check that out.
Okay, because I thought that they got shut down on it because they didn't get, or maybe they just went ahead and got permission to do a derivative.
That's what happened. It was a derivative. We registered it with the Copyright Office, so both of those works. But anyway, tell the story, because that was a really interesting situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was Henry Smith's Give Thanks, wasn't it?
I thought it was your song.
Oh, no, that's the second story.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yes. It was basically that there was a very popular secular song, which will remain unnamed, that sounded had the same melody as Give Thanks.
Oh, really? Okay.
If that's the one you're thinking of.
I'm actually thinking of, there was a Starsong artist, and they wanted to, they added a verse or something to Give Thanks, but they didn't get permission.
Right.
And put it on a record. We didn't have CDs back then. I hate to even say that.
Cassette.
And Integrity stepped in basically and said, nope, not going to do that.
Yes.
Now that was the first, but that's an infringement of that copyright.
Yeah,
correct?
That's a good point. And I have that question come up quite often. People, know a song, they love the song, they think it's going to be much better with this verse that they want to add. Right. Or chorus. And they think that's just fine, but it is infringement to take a work and add to it or change it without permission.
Yeah. I mean, I've had several people come through our Successful Christian Songwriters Facebook group, which those of you listening, if you're not part of that, it's an awesome thing to join. We have over 4,000 people in it now in just a few months. But I've had a couple of people come through and they're so excited because they are rewriting lyrics to secular songs and basically trying to redeem or save a non-Christian song. And I have an enormous disrespect for that whole thing. I feel like if you're spending your creative energies writing words to somebody else's songs, write your own dang songs.
Yes.
I mean, you know, just to be blunt. And I totally disagree with trying to save non-Christian songs anyway. It's like, you know, whoever wrote them the way they wrote them, and it's their intellectual property and it's their deal.
Yes.
You know, write your own songs. You know, that's a whole other pet peeve. But the thing is, they don't have the right to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's tough for people to wrap their head around, and I see this over and over, is intellectual property. You know, is someone's property. Just like your laptop, you know, I would no more think of, I mean, maybe somebody would, but I would no more think of going, oh, there's John's laptop. I'm going to just, without asking, I'm going to pick it up and take it and go use it for a week.
Yeah,
and,
right.
I mean, nobody would think of doing that,
or drive off with my car.
Yeah, right.
Or my wife. Or
just walk into somebody's house. So it's hard for people to realize that intellectual property, because it's not tangible, you can't touch it, it's still somebody's property.
And then there's the whole Christian thing, you know, where people feel like it ought to be free because it's God's.
It's a gift from God.
And it's like, yeah, and there have been whole music movements where people have done copyright-free songs, and let's don't launch off into that.
Yeah.
The only other infringement thing that I ever dealt with was on a song that I wrote, and it had been used so many times in one particular church here in Nashville that a couple of wonderful writer and producer guys who I love and respect, you know, felt like they thought it was a public domain work and adapted it without really checking deeply enough into it. And I think that the church had used this particular song so many years that they had started leaving my name and the copyright off of the printed, you know, bulletin thing, right?
Right.
And so the church kind of played a role in diminishing the value of my copyright.
Exactly.
And so when these wonderful people came to me and said, or actually somebody,
we heard it. I heard it. I heard it.
You told me, yeah. And I'm listening, going, oh my goodness, it had a whole bunch of our words, a whole bunch of our lyrics, and they had changed some things, but it was still so totally.
Right. I mean, it was the melody, it was the underlying melody, no question, and the arrangement was different.
Right.
And then there were verses added. But that was a very interesting situation. Of course, we were able to work it out.
Yeah.
But, you know, other situations, of course, people, you know, they just, you know, there are cases where people have, probably the Pharrell, you know, situation was one recently, but that, you know, there's a portion of the song that sounds just like another song. You know, maybe it's not the entire song.
Was that Happy? Was that?
It wasn't Happy, but
it was another Pharrell Williams song.
Yeah, and he co-wrote it with. I'm sorry because I'm forgetting the names, but that's one of the more recent one, which was, you know, a pretty significant lawsuit.
Yeah. Sam Smith had a lawsuit too because of one of his big songs that sounded like a Tom Petty song.
Right.
So it does happen.
It definitely does happen. And but I think you point out something important, and that is it, you know, if you have your songs on sheet music or wherever you're publishing them or putting them out there, it is important to make sure your name and a copyright symbol and year are on it, so people realize, yes, this is somebody's property or somebody did, you know, write it. It's not public domain,
right?
And so, I need to check with them before I use it.
Exactly. So registering your copyrights then isn't as big a deal unless, and tell me if I'm wrong, unless your songs are being released in social media, or, I mean, you know, you're talking about the tangible expression. What was that phrase again?
Tangible medium of expression.
Medium of expression. So putting your songs out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, wherever. I mean, that is that tangible medium of expression. So would you recommend that our listeners do go through the process of registering their copyrights? And also, I mean, we're jumping ahead of ourselves. We've got a lot more to talk about on the show today.
Yes.
So some bullet points that I really want to get to because I think they're going to help. But I mean, is this the kind of thing they should come to Christian Copyright Solutions to let you help them do this?
Right. I mean, you certainly can do it yourself. There are, the U.S. Copyright Office, us.copyright.gov has a very user-friendly site, so you certainly can do that. But there are certain steps that we help songwriter publishers, set up things properly and kind of establish a solid foundation with their works. And part of that is registering with the U.S. Copyright Office. There are some ways to do it that you can get to be kind of expensive because the fees for the forms, I think, are now $50 a form. And if you register each song on a form, that can get to be pricey. There's some ways to do it where you can register it with your sound recording of the songs and save some money. But that's one of the things where you would start in the area of protection. And certainly getting those songs registered with the Copyright Office and then with some other agencies like the performance rights organizations and others helps establish that this is your song and the year that it was created, the first year of publication, that is recorded, so that if you do run into a problem with somebody, duplicating your song or using your melody and it's clear that that's your melody or even the lyrics, that you have some protection. That's a way of protecting your works.
Right. Okay. So they can come to you for some help or they can try to go and do it themselves if they're big do-it-yourselfers. Cool.
Right. Yeah. And some people are, they dig in and get online and do all the research and they can figure out how to do it. And that's great. But some folks don't want to spend their time doing that. It's not only that you might be able to do it, but where do you want to invest your time? Is it in the creative process? Is it in writing more songs, or is it spending time taking care of the details?
And that's why God made you, the copyright queen, and your staff, your amazing staff, Deanna, and just beautiful, beautiful situation down there. You're located in Fairhope, Alabama.
Fairhope, Alabama, on the Gulf, on Mobile Bay, but right near the Gulf of Mexico.
That's the copyright capital of the world,
no
right
question.
down there. Yeah. Well, you were talking about PROs a moment ago, which are performance rights organizations, and they're ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. ASCAP is the Association of Songwriters, Composers. Wait, I said that wrong.
The American Society of
Composers, Authors, and Publishers.
Very
I just got my tongue.
Done.
I've been part of ASCAP forever.
Yeah.
Great people, great programs, and then Broadcast Music Incorporated, BMI.
Correct.
And then CSAC. I don't think anybody knows what the heck CSAC even stands for, right?
I think you can probably find it on their website, but I'm sorry, but
the Society of Ecumenical Southern... I don't know,
American composers or something. I'm not sure. They're great folks, and they're very innovative. They have they're sort of the smaller PRO, but they also get into other rights management and sort of customize things. You have to be invited to be a songwriter with CSAC. You can't,
just register.
Yeah, but I'm sure. It's, if you know the right people, it's not hard to get an invitation.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're just kind of different and smaller and have gotten into different things.
But the PRO's job is to basically survey what's happening with radio, television, film, grand rights,
internet streaming,
right, which is a huge deal.
Streaming services, satellite radio, yes.
Right, and then collect on the compositions that are registered with them for the sake of the publishers and the writers.
Exactly. They represent the performance rights for songwriters and publishers, and they're the only agency that I know of, in this scheme of licensing agencies around the world where, you have to affiliate as a songwriter. And if you are the publisher as well as the publisher, it's separate affiliations, separate agreements, and the statements go out separately to the songwriters and the publishers. And so that's kind of different. So as a songwriter, you need to pick one of the 3 PROs and become affiliated with them, apply for membership, if ASCAP and BMI. And if you're a songwriter who has not assigned your songs to a publisher, then you are the publisher and the songwriter, and you need to affiliate with the PRO of your choice for both portions.
Right. So you create a publishing account.
Yes, and you create a name. And so actually that's kind of a good beginning when you're establishing a foundation as a songwriter publisher to start with a PRO so that you can establish a publisher or song catalog name. And you have to submit usually like 4 choices of what you want your...
Right.
Yeah. You've been through this a number of times.
Yeah,
with
just
Threefold
recently,
and probably again.
Yeah, I have Donna Love Music now. Donna is my wife.
I remember that. Yeah, that's a great name.
Yeah, thank you. So it's DONNALUV, Donna Love Music /ASCAP. So on all of my new compositions, that's the copyright. And on a Mac, you can do Option G and get the little copyright symbol.
Oh, yeah.
And then write the word copyright and then put the year and just, buy Donna Love Music.
Yes,
So,
perfect.
Yeah.
And so, but before you can really use that name as far as, when you're publishing your music or even as a business, you've got to have that approved by your PRO.
Correct.
Because it might already be used.
Correct. They approved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first step is, submitting an application with the name choices. Your first one, of course, hopefully you'll get. And then you can actually set up a publishing business, you could do a sole proprietor or a DBA and keep it simple, but that's how you kind of begin to set up your music publishing as a business.
Right.
And then once you have that name, you can publish that everywhere you have your music.
Exactly, which they should. And so at which point should our listeners apply to be part of one of the PROs?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think once you're publishing your music out on social or SoundCloud, or you have a recording of it, you've done your own recording, or you've worked with somebody and your song is on a recording and it could end up being streamed through one of the streaming services, that's a good time to go ahead and get all set up. And maybe when you just say, I'm headed in that direction, that you want to just establish a solid foundation. I mean, that's one of the things we do help indie songwriters with is publisher setup service. And it's just kind of going through some of the basic steps of establishing a good solid foundation to get started.
That's great, because the business side of songwriting can just be neglected by us creatives, those of us who would really rather spend time, dinking around on the piano or reading Chaucer or something, cool.
Getting inspired.
Yeah. Exactly. But along with the PROs that we've been talking about, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, there's also a church PRO, if you will, Christian. No, how do you? You
don't want to call them PRO.
I'm going to edit that out then.
Yeah.
So
licensing agency.
Licensing. Okay. All right.
I would prefer. I mean, I think that's a better term.
Okay. Well, CCLI, which is Christian Copyright Licensing International, they're not a PRO, so I don't want any of my listeners to think
because
that
they don't handle performance rights.
Okay.
That's the reason I mentioned that.
But isn't it church performance rights? I mean, it's
no.
Okay, well, educate us then on
reproduction rights, primarily.
Really?
The right to copy, to make copies. Yes.
Oh.
And that's where it's important to understand the different exclusive rights. Because if you get a license for example, you get a license that allows you to publicly play or perform music, it doesn't give you the right to make copies or reproduce, because that's a different exclusive right. So the CCLI church license, which is the first license they came out with back in the 80s, is primarily for the right to copy or reproduce music for congregational singing purposes, to make copies of song lyrics and put them on, to display them digitally I always say overheads and transparencies and stuff, and people go, they'll cock their head and go, "What's that?" But to display the lyrics, to make the copy of the lyrics, to make copies of song sheets, to make custom arrangements, to make audio copies of the service. That all has to primarily do with reproduction rights, not the right to publicly perform those songs in a service.
Wow. Well, color me corrected, because as familiar as I am with all of that, my perception was that if your songs are performed in a church, then that's what the church is reporting on, and they're really only reporting on the copying,
making the copy
reproduction
of the lyrics and or chords or charts or music. Yes. And here's another important piece. It's really kind of copyrights 101. So the U.S. copyright law has an exemption called the religious service exemption, and which is important for churches and any religious organization to know about, because it exempts churches from needing to get permission or licensing for publicly displaying or performing music, non-dramatic literary works, and dramatico-musical works of a religious nature in the course of a religious service in a place of worship.
Wow.
So it's very limited and narrow, but it does specifically exempt churches from needing to have a performance license to play or perform songs in their religious service.
So I could stand up in front of my church and I could sing a Barbra Streisand song, or,
right.
Someday, somewhere, or whatever, right? And,
that I could sing that,
but without getting a license for it or anything.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any song in the world I could get up in my church and sing without having to remunerate a publisher or a writer because of that
exemption.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Now, if you wanted to take chord charts or lead sheets and make copies and give it to the orchestra or the musicians who are going to support you as you sing that song, that is not included, because the reproduction right is not included in this exemption.
Amazing.
There's only 2 of the 6 exclusive rights that are covered in the exemption, and that is the right to publicly play or perform and the right to publicly display.
Wow, that is so fascinating. Wow, I've learned something today, or gotten something corrected in my thinking today.
Great.
I mean, the last I heard, there were over 300,000 churches in America.
Yes.
And CCLI licenses roughly...
I think it's around 150,000.
Isn't that crazy?
With their basic church license. Now, they've gone on to create some other really good licenses. One is called the rehearsal copy license, or the rehearsal license. So the churches that are making copies of recordings for the purpose of their worship team practicing and so on can do that legally. And they do that with licensing the sound recordings. And they've got an audio video license called CVLI. For playing and performing videos and films,
movies,
and that kind of thing.
Clips.
But the basic license is where they started, and that's what churches were doing 25 years ago, primarily.
So if any of our listeners are writing worship songs and putting them out on their social and promoting them and creating their ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC names to go along with all that, they need to be registered with CCLI.
Yes, definitely.
So just go to their website and check out how to join there.
Yes, I mean, I think that's the short answer, and certainly call someone there and find out how to become affiliated first as a song publisher, with your catalog. And then you can online, you can upload and register your songs. But I do think that's really important. I think at different times there's maybe it takes some time, and there might be a fee. I'm not sure where that is right now.
Yeah, but they can check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. But that would be a wise thing to do. And then, if you're registered with the PROs and you have worship songs, our blanket licenses that are designed for churches, the perform music license for premises, which is for anything outside of the religious service, like music playing in the lobby or coffee shops or fundraisers, dinners, all kinds of things that go on in church buildings that are not included in the exemption. We have a license for that, and we have the WorshipCast streaming license when services are streamed outside on your, onto your website. And writers can receive royalties from that as well if they're registered with the PRO.
Oh, that's great. So the answer, if any question you ask Susan Fontaine Godwin, the answer is always, we have a license for that.
Or we can tell you about another license, We're happy to tell you about other people's licenses because, to be honest, we want churches to make the most of the blanket licenses, to create kind of a mosaic of blanket licenses, because that's the easiest, quickest coverage that you can, get in place.
Right. Well, you mentioned a moment ago when we were talking about registering with CCLI that was the wise thing to do. There is there is wisdom in that, which kind of brings me to the whole concept that you and I have been talking about with the whole stewardship of our creativity, back to the creative riverbanks and bringing the structure and the business side, and really taking more ownership in the stewarding of those intellectual properties and the gifts God has given us, rather than just being lax about it, but really paying a little more attention, getting the help of someone such as CCS, and getting a little more on top of that thing. We were talking before we started recording about just being aware of the kind of deals that you're signing should you come to that moment where a publisher or a music company wants you to transfer the assignment of your copyright or the publishing percentage to them because of the work they're doing for you. Why don't you talk just a few minutes about that?
Sure. I feel very strongly about it because I've worked with songwriters now for 32 some odd years. And sometimes, I think stewardship's really important. And I think it's important to learn as much as you can. And certainly I understand if you're more right brain than left brain, some of it is kind of hard to navigate or kind of slog through in a way, but to learn some of the important basics, some of these foundational things, so that, if you get into discussions with a music company that's interested in your songs and they're saying, hey, we'd like to sign your songs, that you have a good sense of what to expect, what is reasonable to expect from a publisher or a music company if you assign your songs. What's the job of a publisher? What's the exchange? You actually are giving up 100% ownership of your song or the portion of the song that you've written. And typically a publisher will, the songwriter-publisher agreement will say in perpetuity, you're going to, as the songwriter, receive 50% of all revenue that's received by that publisher. And then they'll retain 50%. Sometimes there's other deals where it's maybe you get part of your publishing, and there's different ways to slice and dice it. But, what is reasonable for you to expect from a publisher? And that goes back to what we talked about. A publisher, if they're doing 100% of their job, they're promoting, protecting, and collecting, and then dispersing royalties on your behalf as the writer. Now, each one of those, and I've added a new one to that, and that's called nurture. I believe that, if you've got a good relationship with a music publisher, they should be nurturing you as well as a writer to become the best writer possible. And that's a lot of what John does, in working with your group and your one-on-ones and with songwriters. And that's, you're so good at that integrity. You have such a heart to encourage and pastor songwriters to help nurture them to become the very best that they can become. So I think that's important as well from a music publisher perspective. But the protection part is a lot of what we're talking about. They have, a publisher should have the inner workings of the machinery, the machination, if you will, to process all of these things, to know how to register everything with the Copyright Office, to get them registered with the PROs and overseas agencies and with the CCLIs and so on, as well as all of the contracts and the agreements that everything is legally, your works are protected, and to go to bat if somebody's using your work, or the situations we've run into in the past. They're going to take care of the legal side of that and get their attorney on the phone with the people if necessary. That's that whole protection aspect. There's a lot of details that go into the protection of your works. The promotion part is, that's evolved and that's changed so much over the last 32 years. Promotion's very different than it was even 5-10 years ago. But the idea of getting your works on as many products or in as many venues or opportunities to promote the works, whether it's in movies or with advertising, as well as, getting them on recordings and so on. So to actively promote your works and get them out to as many people as possible and to earn revenue on it. Then that whole part of the collection, I had a whole 2 or 3 people in the department that just worked on collection, calculation, and disbursement of royalty statements on a timely basis. I mean, that requires a very complex, robust software application just to do that. So that's what you should be looking for if anybody is talking to you about, assigning your work to them, and it's important to understand that and what is reasonable to expect versus going into a publisher relationship and maybe having unreasonable expectations and then they don't deliver. So it's good to know what is reasonable to expect when you're signing that, and in essence, if they're giving you a fair agreement. And certainly, it's important to have a consultant take a look at things for you or an attorney. It may cost money up front, but it will save a lot of heartache down the road.
Wow.
And an entertainment attorney, not a regular attorney.
Yes.
Because I had so many conversations with attorneys who didn't know entertainment and copyright law, and they'd look at the agreement and they'd just pick it apart when a lot of it was standard stuff. This is standard in the industry. So, you need somebody who understands the copyright and entertainment law.
Right. Wow. Well, I don't know about the people who are listening to the podcast right now, but my head is spinning around and around and around on my
I've
shoulders.
done it again.
So, yeah. Well, no, I mean, it is complex in some ways, to some degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are layers to this whole thing, strata, of all the different kinds of licenses and reproduction rights and, all that stuff that you've just gone over. So without going back through this podcast and making intricate notes, I mean, it seems to me, I'll put in a huge plug for Christian Copyright Solutions because the emphasis really is on the solutions and it's on the expertise, the 32 years of experience. And, what you have just shared is amazing. You're just such a wealth of knowledge. And I just, once again, bow before you as the queen of copyright. I mean, you are the queen, the reigning queen of
CQ.
Copyright. CQ.
Well, thank you.
That's right.
I will say that, because I know this is complex stuff, and because I'm an educator, we have a pretty comprehensive learning center. And so, getting started in the music business is a fact sheet you could go and download for free. And so, yes, you could come. What was she talking about? Those rights and the difference between performance and, there's a fact sheet that you can download that you can reference again when you decide to take another look at it all. So I would encourage you to do that.
That is great. Well, it is a fascinating subject for those of us who tend to not, kind of go that way. It can be a little scary, a little confusing, a little intimidating, to tell you the truth. And as many years as I've dealt with it, you have totally educated me today in some great ways. And I think there's also kind of resistance to it. I know for me, there's resistance to it. I mean, my wife, after 37 years of marriage, she still is the only one who can balance the checkbook. And here I am with a business, but I hire people to help me run this thing because, I think that I qualify as a numerophobic, and it's like, I just don't want to deal with it, and there's resistance. And so, guys, if you're listening out there today and you feel the kind of resistance that I can about, dealing with some of these things, Susan and Christian Copyright Solutions are here to help you. And so check them out at ChristianCopyrightSolutions.com. And where else, I don't want to shut us down too soon. Was there anything else you wanted to share about any of this before we kind of give out where to contact you?
I guess the only thing I would say is, and quite often when I do consultations with churches and ministries and artists and songwriters, I know it can be overwhelming. And I think you've articulated that really well. And that's not an unusual reaction at all. And so I just, it's a process. And if you're going to start somewhere, it probably would be good to look at how can I protect my works. And that's a good place to start rather than going, oh my gosh, I can't process all of this right now. It's good to have a starting point. And when it becomes, if you're getting your works out there and you feel like, gee, I really ought to get these registered in the right places, and, just take a look at that and the publisher's startup, setup service, as well as the fact sheet, I think is a good place to start.
They're on your website.
Yes, under the Learning Center.
Great. Wow. Educational indeed. And so exciting. Where else can people connect with you on social?
Well, we have a very active Facebook page under Christian Copyright Solutions. We've got about 25,000 followers, which is
awesome.
Amazing, having to do with copyrights.
Wow.
And also Twitter account, which is called Doing Music Right. And I guess.
Oh, so that's you.
Yeah.
I've liked some of your stuff, and it's
and you didn't even know it was me. Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
I love the name, Doing Music Right.
Yes, that's kind of our tagline.
Yeah.
We want to help you do music right, but that's CCS Doing Music Right. And of course, there's a little play on words there with the rights and
right.
Am I right or am I right?
You are right.
And I think we have an Instagram account too. I've got a social marketing person who's takes care of all that. I'm on LinkedIn as well if you want to reach out, through LinkedIn, just under Susan Fontaine Godwin. So a few places.
Cool. Wow. Well, Susan, what a great show today. I believe that everybody that listens to us should really be into all of these things, but I think a lot of people will really tap into this show and into you, into CCS, and to begin to bring those creative riverbanks, the structure, the business, the profitability. If you ignore some of these things, and you're really ignoring your own income streams. That's and true. Ignoring the possibility of collecting in a way that you should and could on your songs, and that's what you're all about.
Absolutely. That's right.
And you're a great friend. And we laugh.
I know.
And it's like, that's what I look for, is I have a very high value on fun. And if you can make copyrights fun, then you're a great person.
You got to laugh at yourself. You really do. I oftentimes, I was sharing this earlier, but oftentimes when I'm speaking, or I'm at a church or I'm doing a workshop, I'll start out by, saying, I'm really passionate about my vocation, which is really helping you do music right. But when I tell people what I do, quite often what happens is eye contact is broken. They drop their heads and they look for the nearest exit.
Exactly.
So I've had to have kind of a sense of humor about it, because I know I'm not talking about the glitz and the glamour and the fun stuff in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you introduce yourself as a proctologist, and it's like, geez.
I'm really passionate about my vocation. Yeah, right.
Well, all right. Well, on that note.
That's a good place to end.
Well, yeah, maybe. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. But I do want to say that Susan's going to be part of our big conference in October 5 and 6. We're going to have our first Nashville Christian Songwriters.
Very exciting.
Successful Christian Songwriting 2017 conference here in the Franklin area. So Susan and I are talking about CCS being a sponsor and having a workshop on copyright.
On copyrights.
So, so you got to love and support one another in the effort. So that'll be good. So you guys, we're going to be announcing and opening up registration in the 1st of June-ish for our first wonderful conference. I can't wait. We're going to have great artists. I've already been talking to some artists about being there. We're going to have more industry personnel. We will have great keynotes. We're going to have some open mic. We're going to have some great things. There's going to be great worship. Pastor Steve Garrett at the Gate Community Church is going to be providing our house band for us. And if you don't know Steve Garrett's work, he's a pretty amazing guy, and it's just going to be a fantastic thing. And so be watching for that information.
I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to that.
It's going to be fantastic.
Let me just tell you, folks, John knows how to put on an event. So, to make it
Thank you.
very valuable, but also a lot of fun.
We've done some things, haven't we?
Yes, we've done some workshops and
this kind of
retreats
longevity
and things. Yeah.
Susan and I go way back, so but thank you for that. That's very kind. I do have the gift of hospitality, but it's going to be fantastic. I mean, it really will be worth so much more than you could ever pay for. Just the wealth of people, networking, all the intangibles. People say, well, why would I pay for a conference? Well, you pay to come and meet people. You just don't know what God's going to do when you start hanging around people that are like-minded, that are in this thing, that are going for it. And you just can't overestimate what God can do. Underestimate. Which one is it? Underestimate?
Don't underestimate.
Don't underestimate. It's hard to overestimate. Okay, anyway.
It's got a lot of value.
Tomato. Yeah. So, but anyway, we're going to be doing that. And the other thing that we're announcing right now, and we're starting to get our information out to you guys, is that we are starting the Nashville Christian Songwriters membership program.
Whoa,
the first week.
Drum roll. Shall I do a drum roll?
Right? I mean, we got to sing a song or something, but it is going to be fantastic. You guys know from this podcast, from Successful Christian Songwriters, our Facebook group, from our blogs at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com and whatever else I'm not thinking about, we drop a lot of great content on you guys. Things that are just these podcasts alone, we have over 12 hours of teaching and inspiration and introducing you to lots of great people. This membership program is going to be the best investment you could ever imagine if you're serious about your songwriting. It's going to be very affordable. We're announcing the investment you'll make very soon, but you're going to be very happy about this. It's going to be great. We're going to have more in-depth podcast, more in-depth videos. We're going to do free interactive live masterclasses every month with interesting, phenomenal, incredible people. We're going to have member forums. You're going to be able to connect with other writers, develop co-writing relationships. We're going to have, it's just going to be on and on, just a blast. So you guys be watching for that. We're going to be getting out some information just really quickly. It's all coming together at warp speed, and you're just going to be so happy to be part of Nashville Christian Songwriters because you get to meet great people like Susan Fontaine Godwin, the founder and the chief vision officer of Christian Copyright Solutions.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks for being here today, Susan.
It's been a joy. We know how to have fun, and I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Well, you guys check out ChristianCopyrightSolutions.com. And thanks for being here today on the Song Revolution podcast, where our goal is to equip and empower Christian songwriters worldwide. Come on and join the Song Revolution. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here today for the Song Revolution podcast from Nashville Christian Songwriters. We exist to empower you and to bring you some of the greatest inspiration, insights, and important people from the Christian music world to help you write your best and to be heard as the songwriter that you were born to be. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us over on Twitter and Instagram, and connect with us through our Facebook group called Successful Christian Songwriters. Until next time, I'm John Chisholm calling you to a Song Revolution.